This episode of Detail Therapy is brought to you by 99 Designs. I know you've been listening to this podcast and thinking, I have an idea, I have a project, I have a passion. I want to work on something that makes me excited, even if it's not something that's going to end up being your full-time thing, at least not for right now. But in a world where we can really create ourselves and put out the brand that we want everyone to see, everyone to know about us, we need partners like 99 Designs to be able to convey that visually. So no matter if you need a logo or you need help with a website or help with something even more tangible, like a business card or a book, definitely check out 99 Designs. If you go to 99designs.com/AMYTV, you can get $20 off your first design. And they have so many amazing creatives that can help you to build out what you need, what aesthetic you want. And they're all competing for you to choose the right one for you. So you know you'll be happy when you get to the end result. So get $20 off that first design by going to 99designs.com/AMYTV. The link is in the show notes.
She's an award-winning YouTuber and best-selling author, obsessed with helping you go after the life you want.
I like it.
Join her as she seeks out the stories and strategies.
Give me every little detail
of extraordinary people who found success.
I'm going to get emotional. Oh my God.
Welcome to Detail Therapy with Amy Landino.
Lived by himself, was addicted to the snooze alarm, and couldn't wake up, and so his dog slept in the room with him, Ginger, and so he made the alarm on his phone, his voice saying, "Ginger, do you want to go for a walk? Ginger, do you want to go for a walk?" And so the alarm would start, and Ginger would leap to her feet and be like, "Awesome, yes!" Jump on his bed and be like, "Let's go!" And so the dog woke him up.
Good morning, good life. Welcome back to Detail Therapy. You just heard a little bit of my chat with multi-New York Times best-selling author, podcaster, and all around basically my idol in accountability and habits, Gretchen Rubin. In this episode, we're going to be talking about how to find your personality type for keeping good habits, how to better understand holding your spouse or significant other accountable, and what to do when people close to you are making you late all the time. We have a lot to get into today. This is an exciting episode. But for those of you who are new to the show, my name is Amy Landino, and I will be your host. I'm a YouTube creator, professional speaker, best-selling author, and entrepreneur. I'm here to help you go after the life that you want. You can find out more details about me by visiting youtube.com/AMYTV. Well, while you're listening to this episode, I am likely sipping a mimosa in Riviera Maya. NBD. It is my first official week of vacation. And obviously when I'm recording this, I'm not there yet, but man, I'm looking forward to it. There's been a lot of stuff going on and I'm just so excited about it because I get to kind of watch your reaction to it while I am just taking a chill. And if you want to find out, what I'm up to, where I'm off to, I'm not completely checking out. I love using social media for fun and for business. And so you can follow me on Instagram at Schmitastic if you're wondering what in the heck I'm up to. Like right now, you could probably find out from my Instagram story. Am I telling the truth about having that mimosa right now? Who knows? It's at Schmitastic. Go check it out. This is also kind of fun because it's such a momentous week. This is a big moment for the podcast. You guys know I have been a huge fan of Gretchen Rubin for a long time. I think her work is absolutely incredible. So I thought it would be appropriate for the interview that I did with her to come out during my birthday week. As a matter of fact, my birthday is coming up very shortly at the end of this week. So that's how I'm celebrating. Basically, you got to watch the video on YouTube of the trip to New York with my two best friends, Sarah and Jesse, and the fact that we got to interview Gretchen. You got a little bit of a teaser of the interview in that video. Then yesterday, we had a bonus episode of the podcast come out where me and Jesse and Sarah basically sat in the hotel room and took the 4 Tendencies quiz again, just to kind of talk through our answers and get you a little bit more familiar with the quiz itself. And now today is the day where you get to actually hear from the horse's mouth, Gretchen Rubin, all of the answers to our questions. And I want to give a big shout out to everybody that is in Shine Squad. That's at patreon.com/AMYTV. And for those of you who not only watched the interview live, you already know how this is going to shake out today. And you got to see all of the audio issues that we had and all that craziness. But you also asked some great questions that I got to provide with Gretchen in the interview. So you'll get to hear that here coming up. But I'm just so... I can't stop smiling. I'm very excited about this episode. I'm finally here and finally sharing it with you right now. And so I just don't want to waste any more time because I definitely went over on my time with Gretchen, and she was so accommodating. And let's just give her a round of applause right away, because I was at her house, like just wild, just like the whole thing, totally wild. So let's not waste any more time. With that, let's get into my chat with my next guest. Gretchen Rubin is a writer who relentlessly explores human nature to understand how we can make our lives better. She believes there's no one-size-fits-all solution for becoming happier, healthier, more productive, or more creative, and that when we know ourselves and what works for us, we can change our habits and our lives. She's the best-selling author of 5 books. A couple of my favorites include The Happiness Project and The 4 Tendencies, and her latest is called Outer Order, Inner Calm. She's also the host of the award-winning podcast, Happier with Gretchen Rubin. Let's get into it with the one and only Gretchen Rubin. Gretchen Rubin, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be talking to you.
This is such a pleasure. And before I just go like nerding out, I have to ask you the first question, and that is, why do you do what you do?
You know, I am just fascinated by the question of human nature. Who are we? Why do we do what we do? How can we change if we want to change? And I love to write. So I have to write in order to know what I think. And I just want to figure out what I think. So that's why I do what I do.
I love it. You've written so many books. I've read all of them. I'm reading one of them right now.
Oh, great.
The Happiness Project, Better Than Before, Happier at Home, The 4 Tendencies, Outer Order, Inner Calm is your newest book right now, which I've been listening to on audio, but I definitely have a copy I'm going to make you sign.
Oh, good.
I just have to do that.
All right.
But I have to say that this is a very special experience right now because I brought my 2 best friends with me. I'm pretty sure the only thing we've talked about at brunch for the last 3 or so years or something is The 4 Tendencies.
Oh.
And so it's a whole thing. We even did like our ritual, let's retake the quiz and make sure we're the same people situation before we got here. And so this is like very special. So really appreciate you taking the time.
I love hearing that. It resonates with people.
It really did. I actually asked my group in Shine Squad just to see if they had any questions for you. And Annie actually said something about while you were clerking for Sandra Day O'Connor.
Yeah.
When did you realize, like, was there a light bulb moment when you were like, I'm a writer? Or was it sort of something that over time you realized you were writing and that it could actually be the thing that you spent most of your time on?
It was more gradual. I think I'd done a lot of things throughout my life to prepare myself to be a writer, but I didn't really see a place for myself in the writing world. Like, I didn't want to write fiction or poetry or plays. I didn't want to write like academic books. I didn't want to be a journalist. And at that time, like now there's a lot more emphasis on creative nonfiction, but at that time, all I read was fiction. And I knew I didn't want to write fiction. But when I was clerking, I had this moment. I did have one moment of epiphany, which was I was looking up at the blue sky behind the Capitol Dome, and I thought, what am I interested in the world that everyone else is interested in? I was just like asking myself a rhetorical question. And I thought, well, power, money, fame, sex. And then I was like, power, money, fame, sex. And I just became completely preoccupied with wanting to do all this research. So I started researching the subject and taking tons of notes. And then finally, it sort of occurred to me, this is the kind of thing a person would do if they were going to write a book. And then I thought, well, I could write a book. And I went to the bookstore and got a book called something like How to Write and Sell Your Nonfiction Book Proposal. And I just followed the directions. So it was sort of, what's that Hemingway line? It was gradually, then all at once. And my husband, we were both kind of working in law. And then he also wanted to switch out of finance. So we were in D.C., we moved to New York, and we both left law at the same time and kind of were like, now we're in New York, now we're starting these new careers. There was a day came when we got an envelope from the New York Bar Association asking us to pay our bar fees. And I remember saying to Jamie, should we pay our bar fees? And he's like, are you kidding? No. I'm like, okay, we're not going back. All right. So I found out later we could be readmitted to the bar if we just paid our fees and took our continuing education. But at the time, it felt very dramatic.
Yeah.
But I just decided, I would rather fail as a writer than succeed as a lawyer. So I need to give it a shot and either succeed or fail. And so that's when I really just.
Do you look back on that now and go like, wow, what an upholder thing of me to do?
Well, it's interesting because people will say, like, but how did you get yourself to do all these things? And I'm like, well, that wasn't the hard part. Like, it was hard to get an agent, but to do the things to get an agent wasn't hard for me. So that's when being an upholder is helpful, because I didn't need accountability. Like, I didn't need accountability. I didn't need anybody telling me what to do. I just sort of needed, like, guidance about, well, literally, what do I do?
Right.
What do I have to create here? And then it was not hard for me to sit down and just, like, follow the instructions.
Totally. Okay. I feel like I should have said this first, but I make the mistake sometimes of forgetting that everyone may not be at the same level of Gretchen speak that I'm at.
Yes, yeah.
So let's do this. I feel like a lot of what I want to zero in on is not just outer order intercom, because I think there's something really big there that needs to be talked about, but the 4 tendencies.
Yeah.
So can you kind of just summarize just what are we talking about? What are the 4 tendencies?
So I'll go through it very quickly. There is a quiz online. If you go to quiz.gretchenrubin.com, there is a free quick quiz. It's like 11 questions. Like 2 million people have taken this free quiz. And it will give you an answer and kind of give you a report, and if you want that. But a lot of times people don't even need it. But I'll just give a brief description to you right now, and people can figure
People will go, oh, I know what I am.
It's not subtle.
Yeah.
No. It's not,
There's only 4, guys.
Yeah. It's pretty easy to tell. And so what the 4 there's upholders, questioners, obligors, and rebels. Those are the 4. And what it's looking at is how you respond to expectations, which sounds very boring, but actually turns out to be quite significant and interesting. And we all face 2 kinds of expectations. Outer expectations, things like a work deadline, a request from a friend, and then we have inner expectations. So my own desire to keep a New Year's resolution, my own desire to get back into meditation. So depending on how you respond to outer and inner, that's what determines whether you're an upholder, questioner, obliger, rebel. So upholders are people like me. I'm an upholder. Upholders readily meet outer and inner expectations. So they meet the work deadline. They keep the New Year's resolution without that much
And
fuss.
this is a low population, we should say,
This
too.
is not that many people are upholders, yeah. Second to smallest.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know what other people expect from them, but what they expect from themselves is just as important. And so their motto is discipline is my freedom. Then there are questioners. Questioners question all expectations. They'll do something if they think it makes sense. So they're making everything an inner expectation. If it meets their inner standard, they'll do it, no problem. If it fails their inner standard, they will push back. They resist anything arbitrary. That's a big questioner sign.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime somebody starts talking about something being arbitrary, that's a big tip-off.
I say that word all the time.
Yes.
This is why I'm like so conflicted.
You're like an upholder that's just a questioner, maybe. Anything that's arbitrary, ineffective, unjustified. They want reasons to get on board. Mm-hmm. And so their motto is, I'll comply if you convince me why. Then there are obligers. Obligers readily meet outer expectations, but they struggle to meet inner expectations. And I got my first insight into this tendency when a friend said, the weird thing is I know I'm happier if I exercise. And when I was in high school, I was on the track team. And I never missed track practice. So why can't I go running now? Well, when she had a team and a coach expecting her to show up, no problem. But when she's just trying to go on her own, she struggles. Mm-hmm. And their motto is, you can count on me, and I'm counting on you to count on me.
That's such a good motto.
Yeah, because they need outer accountability.
Yeah.
That is what they need, outer accountability.
And it just, if you're feeling any which way about being that way, it just makes you feel better if you really embrace every step, every moment of that motto.
Yeah,
I think it's important.
Yes. And then finally, rebels. So rebels resist all expectations, outer and inner alike. They want to do what they want to do in their own way, in their own time. They can do anything they want to do, anything they choose to do. But if you ask or tell them to do something, they're very likely to resist. And typically, they don't like to tell themselves what to do. So they don't sign up for a 10 a.m. Saturday spin class because they're like, I just want to wake up on Saturday and see what I feel like doing. Mm-hmm. And just the fact that somebody's expecting me to show up at a certain time is just annoying to me.
Even if it's like a friend?
Yes. Yeah. Well, so their motto is, just so I don't forget, is you can't make me and neither can I. No, but the thing about friend, it's very interesting that you mentioned that because this comes up a lot of times with rebels because people around rebels are like, I don't understand why this person keeps blowing me off, and they get very hurt. And what they don't understand is that rebels just have this like choking trapped feeling when they see something on the calendar, and often they will. And rebels say to me, like, even though I want to go, I just will cancel at the last minute because I just got to get myself out of this feeling of being trapped. So one of the things you can do if you're a rebel, or if you're dealing with a rebel who's kind of has this pattern, which can be quite annoying, is to say something like, hey, you know what? On Saturday, I'm going to go to the farmer's market at 11. Like, it'd be so cool if you wanted to come. So if you want to come, like, you can meet me there. Like, I'm going to go around 11. See how you feel. Because then they're like, oh, I feel like going, but I feel like I'm not. You're not counting on me. I'm not committed to you, so I don't have that trapped feeling.
Right.
Because a lot of times rebels will choose to do it, but if they feel locked in, then it ignites their spirit of resistance, even for something that they want to do.
This is just, when we saw this breakout, we were like, this is so fascinating, because now we can sit and talk to each other and say like, oh, well, Jesse, now we know something about you. We can say like, this might help you do that. Or Sarah, this might help you do something else. My favorite example is the one that you give about the Obligor who wanted to start waking up early and used a third-party social platform to post something embarrassing online if she didn't turn it off in time.
Yes, because it's outer accountability. She used technology.
Like, it's just find the hack. Yeah. This is who you are. Yeah. Find the hack.
So you want to know another hilarious example?
Yes.
Okay, so this was somebody, same situation, lived by himself, was addicted to the snooze alarm, and couldn't wake up, and so his dog slept in the room with him, Ginger, and so he made the alarm on his phone, his voice saying, Ginger, do you want to go for a walk? Ginger, do you want to go for a walk? And so the alarm would start, and Ginger would leap to her feet and be like, awesome, yes, jump on his bed and be like, let's go, and so the dog woke him up.
I love that.
But again, it's like the ingenuity, because what obligers need is outer accountability. And a lot of times they waste a lot of time being like, I just need to get clear on what I want. I just need to get motivated. I need to make time for self-care. I'm like, no, you don't. Like, that's not going to work. Just get outer accountability and you will do it. You want to read more? Join a book group. That's easy.
Totally. I love these tips because we talk about this all the time. We were just talking about self-care. Like, you don't know what my self-care is, you know? And I just think that's so huge. And I think I tweeted you when I was having a moment where I was like, I've been doing this wrong. I took the quiz and I gave myself the wrong answer. And I think this is what happened. When you don't read the instructions properly and you're only zeroing in on one thing, that is an issue. And I think because my work ends up being a very large percentage of my life, and it definitely was for 5 years. I just didn't want to talk to anybody. I was so excited about what I was doing. You forget that there were other aspects of your life, and they flow and they come in and out. And I took the quiz as what I believe. I'm not trying to again like change my mind and everything, but I took it in terms of, in my business, I genuinely feel like there's not a lot of people I would trust to give me the right advice. So I was so questioner to the point where if somebody said I should do something in my business and I wanted to do it already, but I hadn't started yet, it made me not want to do it. Or somebody told me what to do and I didn't want to do it because I figured if I were going to do that, I would have been doing it by now.
But it's interesting because, questioner and upholder overlap because they both meet inner expectations. And it could be that the same behavior is coming from an upholder place, which is because upholders often don't delegate because they don't trust other people to do as good a good job as they do. And they're kind of like, in the end, I know what is right for me and I must meet my own goals. And if I feel like you're not helping me, I'm just going to rely on myself. So there's a lot of deep affinity between upholders and questioners. And so you might be right in that place in the middle. So because often when people are right in the middle, I'm like, if you read the 4 Tendencies book, not to sell my own book, but
please do. Everybody, if you haven't read this book, you've not been following me long enough.
but when you read example after example after example, and you read the challenges people talk about and what works for them, I think a lot of times people are like, okay, one is sounding much more like me than another, even if the quiz is, because sometimes a quiz, you read a question the wrong way or you get kind of an idiosyncratic answer. But then when you read the whole thing, you'll see that one of them fits you better than another.
Right. And it's, the quiz is meant to, I think, make sure that, go with your gut instinct, but also the rest of it's probably going to help balance this out. Like if you're very likely an obliger, you're going to get that result at the end.
I think for most people, it's like they're strongly one. But sometimes when people are kind of like right in the middle, or they keep taking it and going back and forth, I'm like, okay, just read the book, and I think one of them will.
Right.
It's a blunt tool. Like any quiz is a blunt tool because people are idiosyncratic too, because it's like, I work at home, so I don't have a workplace, or I'm vegan, or you know what I mean. Like you run into these things where people's answers. There's factors.
Or like, I think I'm different with my husband than I am with everyone else. Okay, wait, I don't know if that's a bad thing or like a totally normal thing. Like,
yeah. Well, and one thing though that's funny that I've noticed is when somebody says, "I feel very strongly that I'm all of them," that is a very strong sign that a person is a questioner, because questioners are like, "When it makes sense, I act like an upholder, but when it makes sense, I act like a rebel." I'm like, "Yeah, you're doing what makes sense." Well, it's like you're doing what makes sense in a situation. Because you're saying, why should I do this? Because I trust your judgment. Why should I not do this? Because I think you're a chucklehead. That's like, why should I listen to you? Which is a questioner. So they feel like they're a little bit of everything. I'm an upholder. I'm definitely not a questioner. I'm definitely not an obliger. I'm definitely not a rebel. Like and rebels, they're like, yeah, you know. Sometimes obligers think they're rebels. Rebels never think they're obligers.
Let me tell you, when I finally, I think it was just rereading the 4 Tendencies. It was like, okay, I really recommend people read the book and take the quiz. It's very easy to take the quiz because it's so quick and you can get the result, and it's very addictive for that reason. But reading the book, you really start to realize, like, okay, yeah, maybe I'm rationalizing myself to give different answers. But in all actuality,
people do that.
That's what it really is, I think.
Yeah.
But it's finding out what the book is actually telling you, like, no. And then you're like, oh, yeah, that is how I am in those situations. And again, like the most important thing to note here is there's not a bad tendency.
No.
Let's, like, we just talked about this before, and I was like, I want this on the podcast.
Yeah.
And Jesse's going to come on in a little bit and talk about it, but she's the obliger of us, of the 3 of us. And you were talking about some really strong and incredible obligers out there.
No, I mean, all of the tendencies include people who are wildly successful and also big losers. All of these tendencies have strengths, but then also the corresponding weaknesses and limitations. And so, like, so many aspects of your personality come into play, like, and whether you're successful or happy or productive. But you look at obliger, and it's like, okay, let me just off the top of my head, obligers. Andre Agassi, Princess Diana, Oprah, Tiger Woods, Daenerys Targaryen, Jaime Lannister, Jon Snow. I mean, George Bailey from It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
There's so many super, super successful obligers. And
when you meet someone,
I think a lot of religious leaders are probably obligers too. It's like sometimes it's because to understand someone's tendency, you have to understand the way that they think. And sometimes when people are expressing their reasons, they use a vocabulary that makes it hard to understand, like from the 4 Tendencies perspective, how they're approaching that. So there's some people where I've read like biography, like Barack Obama, I cannot figure out his tendency because I keep going over and over, and I'm like, he's not revealing enough about how he thinks.
Yeah. I should have asked his deputy chief of staff that the other day when I interviewed her. I'm going to email her and ask her that now.
Yeah.
Alyssa Mastromonaco was a couple episodes
ago.
ago.
I read her memoir.
Yeah.
That was funny.
Yeah. So here's the thing, or the other one?
Here's the thing.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well,
the other one was Who Thought This Was a Good Idea.
No, that's the one I read.
Yeah.
I knew it had a good title, but those are both good titles.
Both great.
Yeah. No, it's who thought this was a good idea. No, I love that.
Yeah.
I keep thinking I should really like read a ton of biographies of Martin Luther King Jr. because like where's that coming from for him? But I just haven't done that.
Yeah.
Because I'd have to read like 10 biographies and
to really narrow
read journal entries and interviews and stuff because you have to understand how people think. You can't just look at what they do. You have to understand how they think.
How long do you think it takes you when you meet someone to go like, there's a questioner?
Sometimes right away, and sometimes it's really hard.
Do you immediately adjust how you talk to them from that point on? Like, is it just natural to you? I guess not like vindictive or anything, just
or manipulative.
Yeah.
No, I definitely will. Like, especially if someone is a rebel that I'm working with, like I will be very careful to always use language of, if this works for you, when it's convenient, like if you think this is the kind of thing that would be fun or would further your goals, how about this? And I make sure that I'm never in a kind of directing.
Yeah.
Because they're much more cooperative when you come to them like, does this work for you? Because that could be cool. I think this could be cool for you, but like totally.
But it's just a thing in your space that is possible, and it's completely up to you.
Right? Yeah, because you get much better results. And with obligers, it's always I want to be very clear, like, when do I need this? Why are we doing this?
Right.
When is the accountability gonna kick in?
I kind of want to talk about questioners. Andrea asked a really good question. She said, in the book you mentioned that obligers can manipulate their own manipulate. I don't know if that was the exact word you used, but their willingness to do something by creating external accountability, which we just talked about. But is there something similar that questioners can do to manipulate their own thought into doing something that they don't want to do?
Yes. Okay. Well, first of all, they're not going to do anything they don't want to do because they're only going to do something if they think it makes sense. But let's say I'm a questioner and I'm like, I really want to quit sugar, but I'm having trouble quitting sugar. So if that is you, if you're a questioner and like part of you wants to do something, but you don't seem to be following through with that inner expectation for yourself, always go deep into the why, because that is the thing that is
Right.
most motivating for questioners. So you're quitting sugar. Are you convinced that that is the best thing to do? Oh, but so the questioner always wants to go into the reasons. So it's like maybe, and usually when I say to a questioner, well, are you really 100% convinced that this is the right way and the best way and the most efficient way? Because when they don't have that confidence that what they've done is the best, most efficient, most justified, they often like to customize.
Right.
So it's like, are you doing this in the way that's right for you? They all, and it also can be helpful to think, well, this is an experiment. I'm going to try this and I'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
I'll quit sugar for a month and maybe it'll be great and then I'll know something about myself. Maybe it won't be great and then I'll know something else about myself. So they like the kind of information gathering of an experiment. But when they don't do it, it's usually because they haven't, like part of them just isn't convinced that it's the right thing. If you read the book, a lot of times, if you read the book, if you're wondering if you're an obliger or rebel, I think if you read those chapters, it would be very clear to you which one you were.
Yeah.
Because it's just so much more information,
absolutely.
so much more
I think,
context.
Yes, the book helps so much, especially if you are struggling with what your answer was for some reason.
Yeah. Or
Okay.
if you think like as things are, but I think it's actually very valuable to constantly re-examine it, because sometimes people do misdiagnose. Oh.
So I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just two upholders talking to each other,
Yeah.
or even if I was just like a leaning questioner.
Yeah,
I didn't feel like that was fair. So I thought I would bring on each of my friends if they're ready.
Good.
Who wants to go first? Sarah?
Well, similar to what we were talking about before, I wanted to lead questions on relationships.
Yeah.
So specifically, I'm somewhat newly married within the last year, and he's an obliger, and I'm an upholder. And so I was just wondering if from the start, with certain tendencies, would you be like, hey, if you're a rebel, never date an upholder?
Oh,
or if you're
interesting.
like any relationship advice
So
around
you're
it.
an obliger, he's an upholder.
I'm an upholder.
You're an
obli-
upholder,
yeah.
he's an obliger. Okay. So the most common pattern, if you were going to say like what is a striking pattern, when there is a rebel, almost always the partner is an obliger, whether that's in romance or in like a founding team.
Okay.
If one's a rebel, almost always the one is an obliger. So that's the most striking pattern of all. A difficult often pairing is rebel upholder, because they just see the world in such different ways. Because so upholders, like, they love a schedule, they love a to-do list. Rebels love spontaneity, and they don't like being, so they just see the world in such different ways. That can be very difficult. And and this is something else I talk about in the book, when you have that pairing, it's usually in very specific circumstances that are very predictable. It's interesting. Your combination is, I think, a very good combination. It's a very helpful combination, but the one thing that you would need to worry, as the upholder, one thing I would caution you to be aware of is sometimes upholders, and I don't know about you, so I'm just going to talk about me. Sometimes upholders like me can get kind of cold and judgmental and kind of exasperated when an obliger's like, well, I really want to run and I got to get back in shape and I don't know what's wrong with me. And the holder's just like, just make up your mind and do it. Like, I don't understand why you keep talking about it. Just do it or don't do it, but stop talking about it. Or they'll be like, hey, every day will you ask me if I went for a run? And you're like, I don't want to be your babysitter. Run or not, as you want. I'm not your, Okay, but see, the obliger is asking for accountability.
Yeah.
Because if people ask for accountability, it's because they know they need it. And so as an upholder, you want to remember that they need outer accountability. And if you don't want to be that outer accountability, or because you're the sweetheart, you're not good at, you're not serving that function, help them get outer accountability. Understand that that's something that is really helpful for them. So, like, if they're like, I need to take a class, don't be like, why should you take a class to exercise? You could run for free. Why are we spending our good money on this? You're like, no. Exercise is an important life value. If you need to take a class to get yourself to do it, I get it, because that's an obliger thing. Fine. That's outer accountability. Now, for you also don't want it. You seem like a very gentle, caring, considerate person, but sometimes sometimes people take advantage of obligers. So an upholder's like, well, I want to get this done and this done and this done and this done, and then the obliger's like, well, okay, and then nothing's getting done that the obliger wants to get done. So I heard of an upholder who said she was realizing that she was sort of accidentally taking advantage of her husband. So they made a list every Friday of everything she wanted to get done on the weekend or do for fun, and everything he wanted to do. And then she made sure that both things got done, because she was like, I could just sort of accidentally railroad him into it if I'm not careful. You don't want your spouse to go into obliger rebellion. So you want to watch out for, like, accidentally exploiting them or not being aware. And then for the obliger, I think sometimes they can feel bad about themselves, because they're like, why is this person who's so close to me, they just quit sugar. They just gave up drinking. They just quit smoking. Like, they just get up and exercise. Like, ooh, what's wrong with me? It's like, no, this is like an upholder thing.
It's a judgment-free zone.
Yeah, it's a judgment-free zone.
Yeah.
Like, you can get there too. We just need to like figure out what you need. And then also sometimes the obligers are feeling like, because upholders can seem cold. So you're like, oh, I'm training for the marathon. So I know your family's in town, but I got to go for a 17-mile run. Like, and the obliger's like, that is like, where's that coming from? Do you have no affection for my family? Do you not care about the fact that they're in from out of town?
Right.
So as an upholder, sometimes we have to remember, like, to us, sticking to our inner expectations seems like a very, very high value, very important.
Yeah.
And so, but sometimes we have to remember, like, other people might think that something else is more important, and we have to be flexible in understanding that with somebody we love, we might have to like choose to honor that, even if it means loosening up on our inner expectations for ourselves.
Well, and it's fascinating you said that too, because so hypothetically, this is an argument my husband and I have had, completely hypothetical.
Yeah, asking for a friend.
Like asking for a friend. Yeah, we don't have this every Friday night. So I have a very strong inner expectation, and we've talked about this too. I hate being late. Like being late for me is like
catastrophic.
Oh yeah, and
100%.
Even if it's like an open house, if they're like it's 4 to 6, I'm like I'll be there at 4. Like it's just like okay. And so recently there was a situation where we were running late, and once we hit the running late zone, I am not a fun person to be around. And my husband is very much like, we'll get there when we get there. People won't notice we're not there. Why are you being so hard on yourself? Like the whole car ride is usually like you're being too hard on yourself. Let it go. And I think that's the hard thing, because it is an inner expectation of me, but at the same time, I want him to understand why it's important. I'm not asking him to change, but it's also like, this does feel rude, and we can't be late kind of thing.
Well, one thing that an upholder suggested to me in that situation, which I thought was a great idea, is because once you get that time in your head, 4 o'clock, so if it's something where it is flexible, like we're going to go to a party, like it's one thing if you're like going to a meeting because it starts, but a lot of times there's like a window of like when people would arrive in an acceptable way. So in your mind, you could say to yourself, we are going to arrive at the party between 4 and 4:30. So if you're there at 4:25, you're still on time for yourself because you've built it into your architecture for your day. Because once you're running late by a minute, you start to become anxious. But if you go in there saying there is a margin, I'm going to arrive at this party between 7 and 7:30, then you're like, okay, that's fine.
Also, if the party starts at 7, then you tell the husband the margin. 6:30 to 7.
Oh no, I'm like Kevin. The party starts at 5.
If you're is that tightening, right? Like where she's like, it starts at 7. I've just decided I want to be there at 7. I don't care when the arrival period is. So that's like a form of tightening, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
So tightening is when the rules get tighter. For a lot of the tendencies, over time the rules kind of loosen up, but for upholders, often it gets tighter. So like in 2012, I read this book, Why We Get Fat, and it convinced me to go low carb. And when I started eating low carb, I was pretty conscientious, and now I'm way more conscientious because the rules have tightened on me, which is fine because I like eating that way. But sometimes it can become very choking, and you can become kind of like the bureaucrat of your own paperwork. Like a friend of mine who's an upholder, his girlfriend was trying to get him to use a budgeting app. And he was like, I can't do that because I think I would become swamped by I would not let a penny go out of my hands without tracking it. And I don't need it. And it just, I can see how it could kind of choke me. And so you want to be careful with things where, like going someplace on time. Building in a margin is kind of a way of saying there's a looseness here that I need to recognize. The thing about time, though, that also seems to be an aspect of people's personalities. Some people just really want to be on time, and some people are like, unless it's an airplane, like, it doesn't, who cares?
Well, and for me, it's 100% inner expectation, because I do not mind when people relate to me. I don't hold them to the same standard I would hold myself, but at the same time, it's
the problem, though, is when it causes conflict with somebody important to you. When, like, you're angry or anxious and he feels like it's not important, and you're just... The thing is not to get caught in the I'm right, you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong, because you can't win that, because you're right and wrong and he's right and wrong. So it's more like, how do we manage this in a way so that we go into the party like in a good frame of mind?
We should just bring you into it.
I'll call in. I'll call in.
Yeah, Gretchen, we need to talk about it. And my other question that I had, and it's a little bit more out there, but I'm sure you said over 2 million people have now taken this quiz.
Yes.
So after writing the book and more people taking the quiz and you're getting more data all the time, has there ever been a part of you that wants to add like a fifth tendency? Or is there an ability that someone's divergent, like equal across all?
No, I mean... No, I mean,
there's four tendencies.
Because it's inner and outer, and so it's like inner, outer, outer, inner. You know, like those. It's sort of like it sort of has the perfection of nature because it kind of accounts for everything.
It's like earth, wind, air, and fire.
Yeah, well, and then also like because people tip one way or another, there's a lot of gradation where there's predictability within the spectrum of people going among the four. So once I saw that too, that kind of accounts for a lot of things. Like why do some upholders experience kind of upholder rebellions and some don't? Oh, well, upholders who tip to obligers have that kind of side of them. They kind of partake of obliger rebellion. Upholders who tip to questioners like me never experience it. Well, that makes sense because you're like, well, this is an obliger thing and they're kind of half obliger. So once you know that, it really counts for kind of all the different manifestations of expectations.
So my moments might more be upholder rebellion because I tip a little obliger.
That's right.
So I think I might be having upholder rebellion.
Yes,
more.
which is not nearly as dramatic as obliger rebellion, but some upholders do experience it.
Huh. See, I'm not nearly as dramatic, guys.
There you go.
Takeaway.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah,
excellent. Excellent. Good questions.
I have my moments.
Really good questions.
I figured I'd pass over to Jesse.
Okay, Jesse.
This is going to be fun. Let's bring Giggles on. Giggles in the background. That's Jesse Jones.
I want to, just from the obligers of the world, I want to say that out of all the self-help books, the podcast, this has made me feel better about myself than any of them. And I was telling them
better than before. You're referring
better
to.
than before. Thank you.
That's my book about habit change. Yeah.
Yes, because I've always kind of felt like an obliger reading all these self-help books written by upholders.
Yes.
Who are disciplined enough to write the book.
But 100%, and upholders are the people, so many people, like I know a lot of these people, and I'm like, of course this method works for you because you're an upholder.
Yeah.
And they're just like, why can't people just like get it together? And I'm like, this isn't working.
That's what I do. I just tell just schedule it, you guys. Just schedule it.
Just go on keto, work a 4-hour work week.
I'm so glad that you bring that up though, because I think it's really important that a lot of times people don't understand. They're like, this works so well for me, it should work for you. And it's like, and then if it doesn't work for you, you're like, well, what's wrong with me? Because other people are having great success with this strategy. It's like, once you know the tendencies, it's much clearer. Like, well, I would predict that this would work for you. I would predict that you might have a lot of trouble with this. Like to-do lists. Rebels often can't use to-do lists. But how many people are saying like the first thing you have to do when they wake up in the morning is write a to-do list? I'm like, not if you're a rebel. I'm just here to say that it's not going to be a good start to your day. So I'm glad that you raised that and the idea that there's a one-size-fits-all magic solution. Well, and it's just not true.
And I feel like that it's like, I'm not broken. I'm an obliger.
Yeah. Or like that same thing with questioner. Like questioners go into analysis paralysis. It's like, yeah, that's a questioner thing. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just a question of like, how do we fix the way things are set up so you achieve your aim for yourself? But you don't need to change. You're fine. Yes.
And that is the point of the whole thing. You don't need to change. It's what you do with what you are.
Yeah, it's what you do with what you are, how you set things up.
And the second thing that you are 1,000% correct about is the obliger marriage.
That it's a good marriage.
It's fun. Yeah. Yes. But it's also, we just want to do what we want to do. And unless family or friends want us to do something, and then we have to do that. Yeah. Unless company's coming over, now we actually do have to clean. Yeah. But if it's just us and our baby, we will just watch The Office all day. Yeah. And
as one does, of course. Yes. And let's talk about The Office and the 4 tendencies. Yeah, I know. Or Parks and Rec has a perfect, but yeah. No, but obligers, that can be a thing where obligers feel like, do you want to go out for ice cream? Sure, do you? Sure, yeah.
Can I ask something, Jesse? When I feel like we took the test for the first time, and you found out you were an obliger, you found out Scotty was an obliger, and I swear it was like 5 minutes later, suddenly you guys were buying a house.
Oh.
So I feel like there was something that happened there just mentally, whether it was you or if it was Scotty. I feel like Scotty might tip in a different direction than you do.
Oh, for sure. Are you kidding me with the rules?
That it was like,
rules schmools is how I feel about rules. But he tips the other way.
What happened there, do you think?
Well, okay. So yes, to your point, we were saving up for a house for a long time, and we were just saving up and saving up and saving up, and we took this quiz and we decided that we just have to motivate each other. Mm-hmm. We have to go look at a house.
Right.
Yeah.
And you started saving the money, so you can keep saving if you want.
We trigger. We just got to do it. We got to make ourselves go look at houses. We got to take time off work. We just got to do it. And then we looked at a bunch of houses, and finally it got to the point where it was almost like a lazy rebellion. I said, you know what, Scotty, I trust you. Because I lean rebel, he leans the other way. Upholder. So he loves research. He does the research. He looked up crime maps. He looked up this, that, and the other.
But you know what you were saying? I'm counting on you to make a good choice for our family.
That's actually how I get my husband, who's an obliger, to do things. If he's not doing them, I say, this would really mean a lot to me if you just took out the trash right this second.
Yeah.
And he does.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And it's amazing. He does.
He does. No. So obliger marriage, you're 1,000% right. We need a third party or of something to motivate us.
Yeah. Well, the way that can get frustrating is like, let's say he had a health problem and you were like, you got to go to the doctor, and he just ignores you. And then his boss says, hey, man, you got to go to the doctor. And then he goes the next day. And you're like, well, what am I, chopped liver?
This happens every day.
No, because you're in an inner expectation for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're so close, you count as inner, but a boss is outer. And so so sometimes if it's,
I think that's important for people to know.
1,000%. Yes. This is a conversation we have all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
So people feel like, well, it's because you're ignoring me and disregarding me. And it's like, no, it's because you're so close to me.
Yeah.
You're like part of me. So it's really coming from a place of love, even though it can be quite annoying.
So it's merited then when someone says, well, I don't think I'm that way with my husband.
100%. No, 100%.
Whoa.
No, 100%.
Okay, I did not get that.
No, 100%. No, and also with obligers, sometimes outer and inner will shift depending on like what's happening. So like you could be you could be an obliger mother who will do anything for your kids, but then if your boss needs something, the boss's needs will come before the child's needs sometimes because they're more outer. Or like, you might disregard what your sister wanted to do what your sister-in-law wants to do because your sister-in-law is more outer than your sister. And
so it ends up being a layer
It can be for some obligers.
Interesting.
If you're experiencing, if you're like, why isn't this triggering outer? Because one of the things about obligers is they're very different in what will give them outer accountability. Like some obligers, if they pay for something, then 100% they'll do it because they're like, I'm not going to waste the money. Some obligers, it almost makes them feel like they're off the hook. Like, oh, I paid for this, now I don't have to go. So I'm like, okay, that is not working as outer accountability for you. Yeah. Or some obligers can be like, well, I need to do this as a duty to my future self. Like future Jesse will be so disappointed if now Jesse doesn't clean out the basement or whatever. But then for some obligers that doesn't work. And so for some obligers, this kind of hierarchy of outer and inner plays a very big role in what gets met. And then for some obligers, it's just sort of like everything feels like it needs to be met. And so then they very quickly can become overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So we obviously love the 4 Tendencies quiz. We love also taking Myers-Briggs, Strength Finder,
Enneagram,
the love language.
Love. I just told somebody today.
I made them take the love languages.
Okay. What are you?
Oh, I'm words.
That's me too. What are you?
I am acts of service and I think it's words, but I don't know. I feel like it changes all the time.
How about you? Words. Isn't that funny? Well, we're all wordy people.
Yeah.
We're wordy people. Yeah.
Yes, but I also take it very seriously when people use their words because I choose mine carefully.
Yeah.
Why didn't you?
Yes.
And I hold on to the words. And so I'm curious, have you done any research into the intersectionality of 4 Tendencies / love languages? 4 Tendencies, Myers-Briggs.
Yeah, etc.
This.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I love all these things as well. And I really believe that vocabulary can be enormously helpful because sometimes people say, if you define me, you can find me. But I actually think it gives us a shorthand and kind of an impersonal way to say, hey, I'm words of affirmation. Like, just throw me a compliment once in a while. Like, that's all I need.
We say that in fights. I'm a word.
Yeah. You know it. Yeah. So it's sort of like, it helps you sort of take I think it just makes things faster and easier. I do feel like all of these models kind of shine a spotlight on a certain aspect of human nature, and I feel like if you try to match them up, they kind of lose their nuance, and that then you kind of are I feel, and a lot of times they don't correspond. Like there is no correspondence. Like somebody was like, oh well, it's easy to see how the 4 tendencies map onto the houses of Hogwarts, and I'm like, no it isn't, because I will say 3 things to you: Hermione, Fred, George. they're clearly all Gryffindor, and they're clearly not all the same tendency, right? And so, so I think sometimes when you start doing that, you start losing some of the power that each one has, because they're all sort of like focusing ever so slightly on different things. Sometimes a lot overlap, sometimes just a little bit overlap, but I feel like they don't quite match up.
You're starting to use it for different reasons. You're just using them for like arbitrary like classifications instead of, no, this is supposed to be quick response. Amy, do you know yourself or not? Is this a good idea? Yeah. Going back to what you were saying about the I don't remember what your example was, but the tightening situation.
Yeah, tightening.
For me, I can't use MyFitnessPal to log my food because I know that I'll go to Bluestone where we just were, and I will have whatever I ate, and I know that the ingredients and the calories and the carbs and all those things will not match up perfectly with whatever's in. So I'll put it in. I'll like, well, now this whole day it doesn't even count because it's not even accurate. It isn't accurate. So I can't. So,
I know exactly what you mean. And in fact, here's like side note: some people think that those kind of apps may nudge some people to use more processed food, because you know that if it's like something with a zebra code,
I've said that.
Then it's like, exactly right.
I'm encouraged to use things I can scan
but
now.
You're like, this is a Cobb salad. Who knows how many hard-boiled eggs are in here? Like it just yes.
Oh my gosh! But this is my point.
But this is why you have to know yourself.
It's like, I'm going to use another app to log every single transaction so I budget better, right?
Yeah.
I think that was the example.
Yes, exactly.
I can go, nope. Yeah. MyFitnessPal didn't work. You're an upholder. You tighten too much. You can't do it. Find another way.
You have to know yourself.
So you shouldn't be using it as I'm a rebel, like leaning into the name of it or leaning into Gryffindor. I don't even know, but it's what do we know about that thing? It's understanding it better so you can quick response. That's not going to be the right call for me, or it's going to be this is what I should do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. It really can help you figure out what. Or if there's somebody where you're like, I don't understand like why you can't just do this. It's like, oh, well, maybe now I know why you can't just do this. Let's set it up in a different way so that.
Yeah. I think of it as like giving myself a prescription. Yeah. Like a lens to see the world.
Yes.
You know, like, it's not his fault. He didn't know I was words of affirmation and an obliger, and I'm, whatever.
Right. He keeps giving me all these gifts, and I'm like, why are you spending all these money on gifts?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. But then for somebody else, that might be like the key thing to their heart.
We were just talking about how, you know, like as an obliger and a words of affirmation, somebody asked me to do something, I'm going to take it a lot more seriously, and just the intersection of these things. And so I didn't know.
It is very interesting, but sometimes, but like there's the one of the things I talk about better than before is moderators and abstainers. Sometimes for people when they're facing a strong temptation, it's easier to give something up altogether, and then for some people it's easier to have like a little bit or have it sometimes. And these are the people that have like one square of fine chocolate once every other day, and I'm like, I don't get that. I eat the whole. I'm like. I'm eating that whole chocolate bar right now, 8:30 a.m. And so I'm an abstainer. And somebody said, well, of course you're an abstainer because you're an upholder. I'm like, no, there are upholders who are moderators. And they're like, but being a moderator totally fits with being an upholder. And I'm like, but being an abstainer totally fits with an upholder. So sometimes things just don't correlate, you know, like people bring their own kind of angle to it.
Yeah. That was my big question. Yeah. And so thank you.
Thanks,
I will let you close.
Oh, this is so fun. Oh, I love
Okay, so I'm currently reading Outer Order Intercom.
Yes.
I'm curious because I'm all about it. Let me tell you how you changed my life initially. It was this was just a happiness booster or something on the podcast.
Oh, okay.
That it was like, have a pair of scissors in every room.
Oh, yes. Isn't that funny?
Changed my life. Changed my life. I was going to another room for scissors.
Yeah.
And now I literally, I was just thinking about this before we left for the trip.
So funny.
I was using a pair of scissors in my office, and then 5 minutes later, I was using a different pair of scissors in the kitchen.
You're like.
And it's like, this is it. The other one was.
It's a small thing.
Yes. Put a trash can in the closet.
Yes. Oh, my sister taught me that. Yes.
Oh, my gosh. I was like, oh, yeah, I will leave tags on my clothes, wear them out.
Oh, really?
Because I don't feel like taking the tag off and taking it to the kitchen. Or I'll be like, I'll do it when I'm in the kitchen.
Yeah, but
and then I end up walking out the door with tags in the back of my shirt.
Yeah.
They're hidden, but the trash can in the closet totally changed my life. I'm just curious.
Or you have like stuff in the back of your jeans and you're like, oh, this is like.
Yeah, where was I going to put it? Because I don't want to clutter the space, but sometimes I will if that's the situation. I'm just curious if you think Outer Order Intercom is better received by only certain tendencies, or if it's more difficult for others in terms of the decluttering and clearing up. Because the biggest feedback I've gotten on anything I've discussed on YouTube about, listen, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling like you're behind, clean up your desk. And I get so much response that's like, no, I love having a messy environment. I love having the chaos. I know where everything is. And I'm like, do you? Or, you know?
I think, well, part of it is I think that is true for some people. I don't think everybody does need a clean desk. I think some people like to have piles, and some people and it doesn't slow them down. They truly can find everything, and they find that there's a benefit. So I would never say something like a clean desk means, like a cluttered desk means a cluttered mind, because for some people it's just better that way. In terms of the tendencies, when I wrote the book, so the book is like a bunch of ideas. It's not like one program. It's like, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. And the idea is, like, as you're reading it, you're just going to get so psyched up to try some stuff. You're going to just throw it over your shoulder and go running to the medicine cabinet to like throw away all your old shampoo bottles. And so I really thought about, well, here's some research that's going to remind questioners about why this makes sense for them. And here's like ways to create outer accountability for obligers who need outer accountability. And here's ways to kind of gamify it for rebels, because they often like things where it's like, oh, it's like, I'm going to randomly pick something in my house, and like, I'm going to go through and I'm going to, and like, I'm going to do everything that's like every hat. I'm going to just do hats, or I'm just going to do the tops of cupboards and refrigerators, or I'm going to challenge myself to see how much I can do in a half an hour, or, there's ways to make things like make it fun to get it done.
Yeah.
And that works really well for rebels, because they need to find a way to want to do it.
Yeah.
And doing something like, ooh, I'm going to see if I can beat my time folding laundry.
Yeah,
let's
totally
see.
like gamifying
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
They really respond well to something like that. So in the book, I tried to have because there's just lots of ideas. It was the kind of thing like, just pick the ones that, like, some catch someone's fancy, and then others seem appealing to somebody else.
Yeah.
And so it's some are more kind of in your head, imaginative, and then some are more like really concrete.
Totally. Okay. All right. So we have to get into the details of the show. And this is where I start asking about like the details of your day. Things, small things that you're doing. I mean, you can read about a lot of small things you're doing in all of your books. It's fantastic. But things that you do every day that seem to help you be able to go after the life you want, achieve the success that you want. One of the first questions I always ask is, what is your morning routine, and what's the first thing that you drink in the morning? And for you, I just have to go in on this question because I've been dying to know the answer to this since I heard you say it the first time. Maybe it was in a book, or if it was on the podcast, or maybe you've said it a lot of ways, but so the topic of drinking more water, like the New Year's resolution, drinking more water. And I remember you saying like, you don't need it's not even a thing. Like, why is everybody worried about that? Okay. No. How did you come to that conclusion? Where did you get this? Okay. Why?
The Mayo Clinic says you don't, it's like this 8 glasses of water a day is just like comes out of nowhere. There's no basis for that.
Really?
No.
Whoa.
And for the average person, it's just like, you don't need, I mean, if you're taking medication and they're like, oh, you need to drink more water or something like that. But for the average bear, you don't need to. And the thing is, like, maybe you need to drink some, but people are like pumping water, and they're like going out of their way. They're carrying it around. I'm like, you're going to such great length, and they're using bottled water. I'm like, you can drink out of the tap. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that's cleaner often. Tap water is held to a higher standard than bottled water. And you're paying good money and like contributing to the landfill. And it's just like, drink, if you're thirsty, trust your body if you're thirsty. And also people tend to, when you go to a restaurant, there's water there. People drink coffee, and then there's all these things like, well, coffee is actually a diuretic. It's like, no, you're getting water from coffee. You're getting water from your food. Most people, unless you're like an extreme athlete or you have some kind of physical condition, this isn't, I mean, and in terms, if it makes you feel better, or you're like, I like to do it, then fine, because that makes you feel good.
But a person that's like, oh, I don't drink as much water as everybody's screaming at me to drink every day, and now I feel bad as a person like me.
No, it's no. And it kind of breaks my heart a little bit, because there'll be people where I'm like, okay, there's so many things you could do that would move the needle for you. Really, like, if you went from 5 hours of sleep to 7 hours of sleep, you'd feel a lot better. If you started going to the gym, you would really feel a lot better. If you even went for a walk in your lunch hour, you'd feel a lot better. And I'm like, but to focus on this, it's like I talked to a guy, I think I write about this in the book. I talked to this guy, it was hilarious. He's like, he was just a hot mess. I mean, he was like, he was somebody I know from college. He was really overweight. He wasn't playing tennis anymore, which is something he loved to do his whole life. Like, he had a job he hated. Like there's a lot going on. And he looks me in the eye. He's like, I'm going to stop chewing gum. And I'm like, this is where you're pouring your self-control into. You know what I mean? It's like, pick something that's going to move the needle more.
Do something small, but like maybe go in the right direction.
But I mean, something that's I think the question is, given that I can only work on so many things at one time, how do I get the most bang for my buck in terms of happiness, health, creativity, productivity? And I just think for a lot of people, that's just not something, they way over focus on water.
Yeah. Okay. I just love that.
Yeah.
Had to get
but
that.
There's a link to the Mayo Clinic. Look it up.
I will pull that up and put it in the show notes so that everybody can check and get the advice. Okay. So what is your morning routine like? When do you wake up? What do you do when you first wake up?
So I wake up at 6 a.m. every day, like no matter what, Eastern time. And my first thing I do is I get up and I walk my dog Barnaby for his first walk. And then I go to my office and I drink, and this may gross people out. I start my day with a cup of coffee and a Diet Coke. I have like both. You know, that's how I start my day. Love both. Love both.
Is it the combo? Is it like one before the other?
No, it's just like simultaneous.
They gotta be right there.
Double fisting it.
Oh my God.
And you know, a lot of kind of productivity people say you should never do email first, because especially a morning person like me, you should do your most difficult work first. Well, I cannot settle down until I go through all my email, my social media, all that stuff, kind of get myself reacquainted with what's going on. So I will start by doing email, and I'll do that for a while, and then I will work for a while, and then I like get up and say hello to my daughter and my husband and get them off, and then I'll go for a walk in Central Park, and then I come back and have breakfast, which I always have scrambled eggs for breakfast at 9 a.m. And then my day starts, and then it's like I'm either working or doing an interview or, you know, whatever.
So
I'm
your
doing.
walk in Central Park is usually like your exercise for the day. That's sort of like the
well, then
movement.
once a week I do a yoga class, and once a week I do high intensity weight training. Like for years and years, I mean, for thousands of years, I was in a gym, and then I just realized like I was just in a mode right now where I don't feel like going to a gym, and I really feel like going for a walk in the park.
Yeah.
So I just thought, okay, I'm gonna just. It felt very hard to like not be a member of a gym.
Yeah.
Felt like an identity loss, but I was like, I'm paying for it, I'm not going. And because I feel like, I should go to the gym. It almost felt like a bad choice to go for the walk. So now I go for the walk.
Yeah.
I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
That's awesome. Okay. So on my YouTube channel and on this podcast, we talk a lot about like how you manage your time. So are you more of like a calendar person, a to-do list person? Like how do you manage the tasks of your day? What does that typically look like?
Calendar, to-do lists. Absolutely. And then a lot of times I'll just say like, I need to spend 3 hours in a library doing original writing today. And I'll just like slot it in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as an upholder, as we've been talking about, that kind of thing comes very naturally to me. Like I can get done what I need to get done.
Yeah, I've gotten to the point with calendar blocking, time batching so much that it's so tight. This schedule is full. Everything's blocked out. I fix it if I spent more time on something than I should have, just so I can go back and literally track everything.
But do you put things on your calendar like read in bed? I mean, in my mind, I'm like, that's what I'm doing from like 2 to 4. I don't actually put that on the calendar, but in my mind, I'm like, okay, that's what that time is blocked out for leisure and fun and hanging out and stuff.
Yeah, I put it on the calendar if I'm going to do it or if I did do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, and also, it's like, these are all the things I have to do before bed. So they need a spot on the calendar. If I'm going to take Lucy for a walk, that's a half an hour. If I need to wash my face and get into bed, start reading, that's a half an hour. And if I want to be asleep by this time, then that's that time. I mean, like it just, for me, it's all reverse engineering.
But you see why to other tendencies, the upholder tendency can seem rigid. And like, they're like, you're just like a slave to your calendar.
Absolutely.
But to upholders, that kind of discipline feels like freedom.
It's a satisfactory feeling.
Feels so good.
It's less decision making the next day because it's just like it's all there.
Yeah,
what you got to do.
You don't have to figure it out.
And I also can go back and it's like I checked everything off a to-do list because it's just on the calendar. It's done.
So do you do the thing which I do, which is if there's something that I really don't want to do, I'll save it and do it first thing the next day because that's when I'm at my freshest, and I'm also like. It's just easier to be like I can't make myself do it in the like a day that's already going, but I'll just put it on the calendar.
There's got to be a level of priority to it. If it's like I've been putting off something that's never really mattered, I start to reanalyze that at some point. It's kind of a bullet journaling thing. But what have you been reading lately that you recommend?
Oh, I read 2 books that I would say were challenging in terms of their content, but were so beautifully written that I would highly, highly recommend them. One is Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. The other is The Mars Room by Rachel Kushner. And I enjoyed them both so much that I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep reading those, read more books by them, which I think is high praise. And what else have I just read that's good? I just reread Markings by Dag Hammarskjöld, which is a book that I'd read before, but I really liked. I just read Small Fry by Lisa Brennan Jobs. That's a great memoir.
Yeah,
I've done a lot.
You're a big fan of memoirs.
I'm a big fan of a lot. I'm a huge reader.
Yeah.
So I love memoirs. I love novels. I love children's literature. I'm a huge fan of children's literature. I love nonfiction. I love history. I love popular science.
Yeah.
Science. Yeah.
How many hours a day do you think you read?
I have no idea. I feel like I don't read it.
But is it hours a day, or is it like it can be hours on some days? And
yeah, it depends. And here's one thing that I did that was such a happiness booster for me. A friend of mine who's a big reader who worked at Google was saying how her rule is that if she's traveling for work, she only reads for pleasure, and so she never tries to work in an airport or on a plane.
Oh, wow, that's a
She's
good
like,
one.
and so she said, well, now when I travel for work, I look forward to because it's like that's when I get to read. So I made that rule for myself. And so if you see me reading a ton of books, it's like on book tour now. I have so much time to read because I'm spending so much time traveling and also in hotel rooms. And so but then there'll be days where I don't read at all because it's just like, it's a day when I can't read.
Does this go to the connection of like link something that brings you a lot of pleasure? Yes. To something that's like less extraordinary for you, like going to the gym, then plan to watch your favorite show on the treadmill or something?
Yeah, that's in Better Than Before. That's the strategy of pairing, which is like, if there's a podcast that you love, only do it on the treadmill. Or like my sister only watches Real Housewives on the treadmill because it's
relatable.
She loves
Same.
it. Yeah, she loves it. And so it's like
that's actually the only time I have to watch YouTube these days because I'm too busy creating for it. So I'm not watching it, and I feel like I'm losing touch. So I'll do it on either elliptical or treadmill or something.
And so the key to pairing is to say the only way I can watch the Real Housewives is if I'm on the treadmill. What if I break my leg? Can I watch Real Housewives? No. What if I have the flu? No. It's like, what if the treadmill breaks? No. They only happen together. I did this in college where I was like, I could only take a shower on a day when I exercised. And so it's like, you can go a day, you can go two. I mean, you want to take that shower.
That's relatable anyway.
Yeah, so you make yourself shower. Yeah, so that's pairing. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Kerwin asked a really good question, and she said, what do you outsource in your life?
Ooh, well, I have an assistant who does my calendar, which was a huge thing for me. And until a year ago, I did my own calendar, and it was just like a giant thing.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I have a dog walker. So I take my dog for little walks, but he's super energetic and super social.
So sweet, by the way.
But if he did not get tons of exercise and tons of playtime, he would start getting like very mischievous.
Yeah.
So like that's something that I outsource. What else do I outsource? I don't cook, so other people in my house cook, or we eat out, or like I eat tuna fish out of a can, or whatever it is. But I don't, like therethere's certain things I just
eat for fuel, like
I'm just like, I'll eat scrambled eggs forever. Yeah. So like I'm fine with that.
Totally.
What else do I outsource?
That's a good list.
A lot.
Yeah, that's a good list. Who does the grocery shopping? I guess like do you?
Well, we live in New York City,
so
we use Fresh Direct a lot.
Okay,
so that's like stuff comes. That's when your big shop, like your toilet paper and your canned soup, and even things like apples and meat and eggs, it all comes.
So great.
And then it's like my husband though is like he's like a hobby grocery shopper. He likes to go to like the fancy gourmet market and buy like 2 things. Yeah. And so when we need 2 things, he'll go and so he enjoys doing that, but he doesn't want to go with like the 40 item list and like lug home 6 bags of groceries. Totally. So we use Fresh Direct for that.
I always wonder about that because I live downtown in Columbus too, but it's not the same situation.
They don't have.
We have some delivery services. I definitely use some like real time stuff. I should probably get more into Amazon.
You should really try it because it is like
I wonder if we have something like that. But I'm usually doing like an Instacart or something where it's like Uber for groceries or something. Yeah. But yeah, it's I'm always like, how do people grocery shop here? This is so
when
crazy.
I was growing up, my mother went to the grocery store every day. I mean, we just went constantly. It was a huge part of my childhood.
Okay, so after all this, I've had some technical difficulties. You welcomed us into your home, which is just like amazing, and I've taken up way too much of your time. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions.
We could talk all day. Yeah.
Before I ask you the last question, where can people follow up with you online? Where can they follow you?
So I have so much stuff. So if you go to GretchenRubin.com, I write a lot about my sort of daily adventures and happiness and good habits and the 4 tendencies. So there's a lot there. There's also, if you want to like read a sample chapter of my books or listen to a sample of an audio clip, there's all sorts of stuff related to the books. I have a podcast called Happier with Gretchen Rubin, where every week I talk about how to be happier with my sister Elizabeth Kraft, who is a very successful showrunner in Hollywood. So we talk about how to be happier. I have an app, the Better app, which is it's about happiness, but especially if you want to go deeper into the 4 tendencies and maybe talk to other people of your tendencies, or like parents of rebels, or or teachers trying to use them in the classroom. There's a lot there. And that if you search for Better Gretchen Rubin in the App Store, or if you go to betterapp.us, you can find it. And if you want to take the quiz, we talked a lot about the 4 tendencies. Again, the quiz is quiz.gretchenrubin.com, or just go to my site and like type in quiz, and it's like very easy to find.
Yeah. I feel like if you just Google Gretchen Rubin quiz,
it'll just pop
right
up.
up.
It'll just pop up.
So many people taking this quiz.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And don't forget to pick up all of her books, but Outer Order Inner Calm is out
The
now.
new one,
and it is just such a quick, absorbable, awesome little read. And I think it just will help people a ton.
Good.
So my final question for you, Gretchen, is what does it mean to you to go after the life that you want?
To me, I think the tricky part of that question is knowing the life that you want, because I think sometimes people don't really know what they want from their life. And so there's a lot of self-reflection. And then it's about how do you create a situation where you're able to achieve your aims. And that's really what I write about all the time, which is like, once we know what we want, how do we get there? Because I think there's different ways for different people. But that's, for me, it's knowing myself and then creating an environment where I'm able to keep my promises to myself.
Thanks for being on the show, Gretchen.
Thank you. This is so much fun.
It was so much fun.
Thank
Dream
you.
come true.
Yay.
Okay, there was a lot in there. And thank you so much to my best friends, Jesse and Sarah, for asking great questions. I just wanted to make sure that we had a variety of perspectives chatting with Gretchen, just because I'm an upholder and she's an upholder. So it's kind of like, that's boring. Let's look at things differently. Let's talk about how our spouses are different and they have different habits and tendencies. So I think we got a lot of great stuff out of this. A couple of details I want you to take home with you. Find the hack, especially for those of you who need outer accountability. I certainly need some of it, but just not all the time. If you need it, find where you can get it from and leverage it. And don't be ashamed to ask for that help. I absolutely loved, I don't know if you could tell by my reaction. You could definitely see it in the video. My reaction to the dog jumping on the owner because of a recording that plays with the alarm that sounds like the owner asking the dog to go for a walk. So you have no choice but to wake up on time in that case. That's just such a great example of finding outer accountability where you need it from and being able to follow through with your habits. Such a great one. Something to keep in mind about upholders, people who are held accountable both internally and externally. They are a small population and they can sound really cool, right? Like, who doesn't want both? Who doesn't want it all? But there's also a lot of downside to it, including the tightening thing that we were kind of talking about. I do find this in myself where I won't do something if I can't do it 150%, or if I try to do something 150%, it takes up a lot of time, and that can be really exhausting. But I thought it was very important that she mentioned that because upholders are partial obliger, they also go through their own form of rebellion. So even if you think there is another tendency that's better than yours or easier than yours, they all have their consequences. So remember, upholders, you go through that rebellion too, and you go through tightening, and you go through some things that are not going to be super productive, even though overall it sounds like you are super productive. You still have to find your hacks as well. And truly the thing that blew my mind the most was not realizing how much your spouse or significant other becomes such an internal accountability source. So it just might be true that even though we have a certain tendency, we have to look at the big picture, not how we treat our husband or wife, because we're probably treating them like they are the next best thing to our own selves. And if you're an obliger and you only hold yourself accountable based on other people, your husband or wife may not be that other person because they are so close to you. And I like how she explained the layers. So in thinking about that, you can really go deep on how do you better hold your spouse accountable, knowing that you're a very internal source for them and knowing what their actual tendency is. Does it match up? Does it not match up? And just keeping all of that in mind. I just found that so fascinating. It's not something that's ever resonated to me before. If she's ever said it in another medium, I'm so excited it happened here on Detail Therapy because it hit home with me big time. What an amazing episode. This is such a moment. This is a big one for us. I'm so happy that you are here to be a part of it. If you want to continue to improve on this kind of thing, hold yourself accountable, find ways to hold yourself accountable, maybe even find an accountability partner with people around you who are awesome and care to lift you up. That is what Shine Squad is all about. If you go to patreon.com/AMYTV, AMYTV, you will be with me and my squad, and we talk all things better morning routines, better habits, better productivity, and actually encouraging each other instead of what you find a lot on the internet, which is mostly criticism. Take a step back, give yourself a positive surrounding, and join Shine Squad. It's at patreon.com/AMYTV, and the link is in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it as always. If you would like to discover even more actionable details, you can head over to AMYTV by going to the URL youtube.com/AMYTV, or you can search your YouTube app for Amy Landino. Remember, subscribe for good vibes, kiss the ones you love, and go after the life that you want. Cheers.